Do these videos even actually need an introduction? I feel like at this point I'm just beating a dead horse, in more ways than one to be honest. While yes, Chris has been around a long time and his story's been covered extensively by plenty of people, my channel would feel almost naked without having another regurgitated quickie page to read. It's basically a staple of my content, these videos having the least amount of effort put into them. But some people seem to really like these, so I'm kind of at an impasse here. I guess I'll go ahead and go through with it, mainly because I gotta pay my rent. I'm never gonna get away from that one, am I? Let's start off with a strong one. Today, we're gonna be reading the quickie page on the dimensional merge. Let's get right into this. Damn Dimension 1218's reality limits and shit. Chris, after New Year's 2019, disappointed when our reality did not merge with Sonichu's. The dimensional merge is completed. All that remains of Universe 1218 is the failing Earth, period. Chris, coping with being sent to jail for an extended period of time. The dimensional merge, or the dimensional merger if you're an even bigger idiot, is a supposed apocalyptic event in which Chris believes that Dimension 1218 and Dimension C197, the universe of real life, in the parallel universe where Sonichu and other fictional characters live, will combine, bringing fictional characters into reality, and in which Chris, being the designated liaison of the event, will ascend unto godhood. Of course, the merge is just an escapist fantasy and coping mechanism for Chris. Originally part of the lore the idea guys had brainwashed into Chris, the dimensional merge is Chris's latest means of avoiding reality, believing that it will rescue him from his self-inflicted real-life problems and enable him to continue living like a child. First announced in October 2018, the merge was expected to take place by the end of the year. That deadline, and several others, passed without incident, but Chris has remained persistent. In the years since, indulging this belief has become the default latching-on point for would-be trolls. In this photo here, we have Chris warning people about the upcoming dimensional merge. Everybody in downtown Charlottesville should have ran, but unfortunately they stayed. I hope they're gonna be okay when our universes eventually do collide. Background. Chris has, for a long time, believed in the existence of one or more alternative universes, where every fictional character lives. He first alluded to this belief during a January 2010 phone call with Alec Benson Leary, in which he told Leary that Asperchu would surely have negative feelings about his own name and repeatedly called Leary naive for explaining that Asperchu is not a living sentient creature who lives in another universe and can independently generate his own thoughts. This is most likely one of the things that Chris has learned from television. More specifically, he offered the 1988 animated comedy Who Framed Roger Rabbit to Leary as evidence for a toon world inhabited by every published or unpublished cartoon character. From then up to the Dimensional Merge saga, Chris has increasingly believed that the fictitious city of Quickville and his characters were real, embracing their alleged existence as a way to escape from anything he does not like. Chris has been spotted conversing, interacting, and even dancing with his imaginary friends on many occasions. Throughout 2017, Chris appeared convinced by the idea guys that the Sonichu and Hyperdimension Neptunia universes actually existed, but in a separate dimension. In July 2018, Chris tweeted at Marvel writer Seanan McGuire, asking him to confirm the dimensional number of this Earth. McGuire responded with Earth 1218, and later clarified that this was the Marvel Universe's designation for the real universe. Chris took it as gospel, and subsequently uses 1218 to refer to the actual existing universe. Weeks later, McGuire reiterated once again that everything was imaginary, but Chris's response to McGuire and various trolls indicates that he still believes that people such as McGuire can communicate with other dimensions. Over the summer and fall of 2018, Chris met with a teen Troon squad, people who gave him weed, pretended to be possessed by Sonichu characters, and that the universes would merge. Relation to the financial crisis. Chris believes that he is wealthy in Quickville, and that when the dimensions merge, he will have access to his money there and he will be able to pay off his current real-world debts. He is asked to borrow money from people, claiming that he will pay back 10 times the amount once the merge concludes, not realizing he sounds like a more autistic version of the Nigerian prince scam. On October 8th, Chris tweeted, "Sometimes I just want to give up, but my loves won't let me. If people could help us here, in this world, monetarily, we would be okay. I promise all of you that when that day comes, I will reimburse you personally in the nation of Quickville." He followed up on the 23rd of October with, "When the worlds merge, I will have access to tons of savings in Quickville. It is a lot of money, indeed. 10 to 1 is my repayment rate." On the 24th of September 2018, Chris was sued by Second Round Sub for unpaid debt, and on the 23rd of October 2018, Midland Funding followed suit. The case for the former was postponed in January, but the verdict on the Midland case was read on the 19th of December 2018, requiring Chris to pay $2,777.90 at 6% interest and $55 in court cost. Remarkably, he has done little begging in the wake of the lawsuits. This has surprised many, considering the amount of time he has groveled online for money in the years 2016 to 2018. He has instead chosen to stick his head in the sand and pretend that the merge will solve all of his problems for him. Beliefs on the merge. When I had to go to the hospital and stay in hospital with heart complications, Chris sent me a message from his Magichan Sonichu account claiming that my symptoms were associated with the effects of the dimensional merge. Ali Hirschberg. Chris announced the event on the 14th of October 2018. On the 26th of October 2018, Chris posted a video entitled Dimensional Merge Announcements, where he outlined the process of 1218 merging with its sister dimension C197, where every fictional character known to exist resides. He believes that once the merge occurs, Earth will be shared by humans and various characters. On the 14th of November 2018, Chris made a tweet explaining the survival rates for the inhabitants of the sister dimensions during the merge. Chris explains the population math as follows. 61.25% of the population of Dimension C197 is identical to that of Earth in Dimension 1218. The remaining 38.75% of the population of C197 are OCs that are unique to C197. All of the OCs of C197 are guaranteed to survive the merge. At least 51% of the human population of Earths in both sister dimensions will survive the merge, and at least 41% will not, with an uncertainty of 8%. The best outcome of the merge would leave 59% of the population of 1218 alive, and all of the 38.75% of the OCs of C197 plus 11.25% of the human population of C197 in the dimension 1218 C197. The dimension of 1C211987 would be left with 109% of 1218's current population, leaving approximately 8.365 billion humans and OCs in the new universe. Naturally, he believes that he will be guaranteed survival because he, quote, absorbed the spiral seal from his Sega Dreamcast and therefore is the middleman between the two dimensions. He believes that himself and Megan are basically deities, and that he will gain superpowers following the merge because of his belief that he is half Sonichu. He sent dozens of follow-up tweets further detailing the process, explaining that Quickville would replace Northern Virginia, Gotham City will replace a portion of New Jersey, and Equestria will take over the entirety of Maryland. He explained that this will resemble a natural disaster scenario and that mass evacuations may occur during the merge. It's also worth noting that Chris did all of his math while he was eating at McDonald's, scribbling down his notes on a napkin. On the 18th of November 2018, Chris announced that the merge had begun. This date coincides with the anniversary of the Jonestown mass suicide, implying that the Idea Guys had originated the merge concept, as their calling card was inserting infamous historical dates into Quickville lore. In early December 2018, Chris reported feeling psychic headaches and associated the merge with the California wildfires and the romaine lettuce recall. As the merge drew closer, he claimed to have lightning powers and that the millions of volts of electricity in his head is evidence that he is half Sonichu. Without having the time estimate for the merge, he tried to dispel doubts by claiming that he can touch and feel Magichan and Crizzle Rosechew. He estimated that the merge would conclude by the year's end. Magichan doxing incident. On Christmas 2018, someone claiming to be Magichan logged into Chris's Twitter, posting a pastebin dump containing the dox of one of the Teen Troon Squad's members. They also stated that the merge would take place in 20 years due to time dilation, and that Sonichu residents of C197 would need to hibernate until then. Chris ultimately disregarded the news. The merge in 2019 and beyond. Naturally, New Year's Eve of 2019 was an eagerly awaited moment as the final chance for the cataclysm to occur. In the early morning hours of the 1st of January 2019, Chris spoke out on Twitter in a New Year's address, explaining that the merge had not happened on time due to red tape, betraying some of the internal bureaucracy in the process of becoming the goddess of 80s computers. He remained insistent that the event would still occur, adding in reassurances that the Sonichuverse was still awake to remind everyone of Magichan's doxing non-canon status. Good New Year, everyone. I shall make my statement for now, and I want no backtalk or hateful commentary. The dimension of C197 and R1218 is still in progress. There is more damn red tape to work through, but our goal is still set. It is only delayed. Everyone of C197 is still very much awake. We have secured R4 in a magic-proof cell a few days ago. Not even that witch's courier on Facebook can say otherwise, because I know better, and her word shall never get to or sway me any other way. I still remain the CPU heart of the Commodore consoles, Quickville, and Comma, and everyone is safe and well. But for now, I shall delay online talk of the dimensional merge through my social media accounts until further notice. And I still remain very much married to Magichan Sonichu, Crizzle Rosechew, Sylvana Rosechew, and Mewtwo. There is room for at least one from this dimension, but there is no rush. For now, Happy New Year, everyone. Dismiss. The context behind Chris's aside for R4 was revealed in screen caps Lucas leaked on Cow. In them, a person purporting to be the R4-possessed Jessica Quinn PMs Chris over Facebook, saying that she had tricked Chris into believing in the merge. Ha ha ha, my task is complete. It's taken far longer than I had originally anticipated, but the pieces are finally in place and the end of this road in all things is in sight. Blueheart, you fool! False goddess! Not even you could see what was transpiring right before your eyes as I wove my web of deception. Did you think I would vanish so abruptly? When my previous plans to deceive your heart was ruined, I began work on a new plan. For months, I have been pulling the very fabric of your precious creation apart and manipulating several key figures, and now they dance like puppets before me. Your beloved Magi-chan was no exception, my dear. In fact, he was unknowingly my greatest asset. Didn't his behavior strike you the least bit odd these last few months? And 20 years to catch up to 1218's timeline? I'm not sure who was the bigger fool here. He for listening to the thoughts I placed in his subconsciousness, or you for faithfully believing it all. Ha 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 ha! Let me fill you in on a devious little secret. The hibernation your beloved purple hedgehog was talking about was all a trick concocted by my brilliant mind. I have fooled all of the inhabitants of our universe into believing this dimensional merge, and have spun a potent curse upon all who lay down for their slumber. As Magi-chan said himself, the communication between worlds will be severed for 20 years. No help from your outside world. I and Legion will be free to reshape reality as we see fit, and I don't see room in our new worlds for the oppression of overbearing gods and goddesses. Annihilation to all! The OCs shall be sent from their graves by none other than R4, Queen of Darkness. There is nothing you can do. With your connection severed and your precious OCs out of the picture, I have at last won. The slate shall be wiped clean, and a new order, my order, shall rise from the ashes. However, the attached post from Lucas suggests that Lucas had been posing as Quinn in an attempt to pass the blame onto her. I'm not even the one who started the merge thing. I just tricked my mom's sugar daddy into buying Chris's porn shit. Here's screenshots Chris sent me of text from Jessica Quinn, pretty sure she's the one. Despite Chris stating that he would abstain from talking about the merge online until further notice, he went on to mention it the following day while writing about the superpowers he got from it. On the 4th of January 2019, Chris said that he was awaiting further information on the merge, more indication that the entire merge event had been scripted and fed to him by trolls who were no longer in the picture. Because of some deity-level red tape, it's delayed, but it will happen soon enough. But don't make a big deal about it until I have more further information about it. Chris, Jackson Dalton interview. Particularly troubling about Chris's comments is that he wants more information in order to verify that his delusional thoughts are real. By admitting this, he highlighted a path for new trolls to get into his head, showing that he failed to learn from the Idea Guys saga. Several eager weens rushed in to fill the gaps in Chris's knowledge, though by mid-June of 2019, Chris had apparently become overwhelmed with these, and has since turned to other, more credible sources. Continued hope in the merge. After the first deadline for the merge had passed, Chris remained optimistic that the merge would still happen at some point. While he was initially quiet about it, he began ramping up the rants about the merge again around spring. On the 31st of March, he tweeted, "The hashtag Dimension Merge is still happening and going on. C197 plus 1218 equals 1C21 1987. OCs are really becoming more obvious here. There are even sightings of a Dio blonde vampire in Egypt. Descendants beware. Dio is coming after you all." Several merge-related tweets followed in April, in which he claimed that people in Japan were seeing OCs and blaming the Notre Dame church fire on a Pokemon. The events around this time give context for Chris's renewed interest in the merge, and earlier March 2019, after Chris was gifted a Nintendo Switch, he developed an obsession with playing the augmented reality game Pokemon Go. The game's premise revolved around using smartphones to see Pokemon characters in real-world settings, which coincides with Chris's beliefs about the merge. On the 2nd of April, Chris was sued for debt for the 4th time, further confirming the link between the merge and his financial problems. On the 3rd of April, a new troll entered the stage for the future message of Crystal Weston Chandler, who presented himself to Chris as a messenger of the merge. Beginning in summer 2019, Chris would emphasize more often that the merge was already nearly done and would soon be completely finished, like an obscure sect leader struggling to explain to his followers after the fact why the second coming had not come when he calculated it should. On the 13th of June 2019, Chris claimed that he had been consulting with Jesus Christ, and that Jesus had been helping with the dimensional merge, which would be finished in the near coming days, but without giving an actual set date. Chris also mentioned that Jesus had been preaching this at churches and in Pokemon gyms, and yet needed Chris to help get the word out by posting to his protected Twitter account. Naturally, after indulging his fantasies on the matter, Chris begged for money. As July 2019 began, Chris tried to demonstrate his divine abilities through hashtag psychic powers, a pair of videos in which Chris drops items from his hand by the ideomotor effect. On the 8th of July, he tried to assure his true and honest believers on Twitter that the merge's effects would be mild and temporary, and continued his long trend of attributing random events in the news as harbingers of the merge. On the 10th of July, Chris, via his Magi-chan sock puppet on Twitter, complained about the many uninspired trolls who have tried to take advantage of the merge to exploit Chris. This has not prevented others, such as the multi-dimensional White Knights or Jacob Sockness, from attempting to weasel their way into Chris's inner circle. To advance his belief in the merge, Chris resorted to using sock puppet accounts on Twitter, most prominently Magi-chan 111448, to broadcast events. Whether he is using this as a transparent disguise to convince others, or he genuinely thinks he is channeling his cartoon character's thoughts and statements into a microblogging platform is unclear. On the 14th of August 2019, Magi-chan would announce that he allegedly arrived in the real world, and would presently describe in a video the merge's status. In a Discord message in November 2019, Chris was still pining for the merge, stating, quote, "As for getting me into C197, that has to happen ASAP." In March of 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Chris believed it to be a sign of the impending merge. On the 29th of December 2020, Chris announced that the merge is still on. Later in the day, Chris stated his merge is on post was in reference to an Apex event, most likely referring to him attempting to break the Iron Curtain. The next day, Chris went into further detail alluding the merge happening on New Year's Day 2021. When New Year's Day came, Chris clarified that he meant the merge would happen any moment at the present time, meaning very soon after the new year. On January 22nd, Chris announced that the merge would be completed, making it the third time he had claimed the merge would happen at a specific time. Back on the 30th of October 2020, Chris, pretending to be Sonichu, stated that if he could not get Chris's body back to C197 and Chris and Sonichu's souls swapped, Chris would not return to 1218. When Chris and Sonichu swapped on the 25th of February 2021, Chris was expecting the merge to happen on that day because of the swap, which is why he said, quote, "The dimension merge is happening. Know which universe you are in when you were suddenly transported, peoples." This would be the fourth time Chris has claimed the merge would happen at a specific time. Due to the merge not happening on February 25th and My Little Pony Generation 5 screenshots being leaked, Chris decided to leave Twitter to remain in his cognitive dissonance. Predictably, this commitment to leave the website only lasted a single day. On the 9th of March 2021, Chris claimed that 1218 and C197 were one combined dimension in the past, but King Arthur and other kings used magic to separate the combined dimensions and send all known magic to C197. The merge as it's happening. Chris has written in a 25th of May 2022 letter directed towards Kenneth Englehart, telling him that he believed that the dimensional merge had already happened, and as a result of all the people he's deemed toxic, has suddenly evaporated. He later learns that was not the case. Post-merge era. During his arrest on the 1st of August 2021, Chris declared that the merge is on once again, possibly believing that it will get him out of jail. In a series of letters to a number of individuals penned during his incarceration, Chris has continued to maintain his belief in the merge, even as he incorporated several aspects of Christianity and biblical references into his ever-shifting mythos. Despite his apparent newfound faith in God and his self-identification as a living reincarnation of Jesus himself, he has consistently kept his title of CPU Blueheart, making numerous allusions to his belief in the merge across all of his letters. In his first widely publicized message from jail, he claimed the merge was, quote, "completed and concluding," echoing similar beliefs in his second missive. In the third letter from jail addressed to a ween attempting to convert him to Islam, he states that the merge is completed, with only the failing Earth of his home dimension awaiting eventual incorporation into Chris's OC-infested utopia. While some expected his time behind bars to humble or educate him, Chris has evidently chosen to further ensconce himself within his imaginary world, likely doubling down on the merge's use as a coping mechanism in the belief that it will rescue him from his imprisonment and probable conviction. The merge's future course is subject only to Chris's whims, and is not dependent upon Chris's deteriorating finances, his aged mother's declining health, or any other event in 1218. Originally supposed to be complete within a few months of its announcement, it is now nearly complete and yet continues to be pushed further into the future, as nothing in Chris's world objectively changes except for the identities of his enabling rivals for incompetence. Whether Chris will abandon his belief in the merge in the event of some external shock like Barb's death and its fallout, or retreat even further into it, is something only time will tell. Judgment Day, the Second Coming, and the Collective Shift. As he was being arrested, Chris noted that, in his mind, the merge was almost complete as he denied the reality setting in that he'd be thrown in the brig for a very long time. Some anticipated that with enough time away from the internet and left purely to his own devices, Chris might come to realize the truth. However, instead of being a wake-up call, Chris's reignited interest in the Bible instead caused him to retreat even further into his fantasies, believing himself to be Jesus Christ reincarnated. Over many correspondences from jail, Chris outlined a Judgment Day, where the following three events are supposed to occur. Continuation of the dimensional merge, the collective shift, where all of the good and neutrals in the world will be sent to C197, and the haters, referred to in ramblings as the toxic minority, will be left behind on a doomed world as the rapture occurs. The Second Coming, where Chris Chris will descend from the Temple of Sonichu and personally carry out the collective shift, as well as rescue buildings and artifacts he happens to like. While that one did eventually happen, it was merely Chris's return to the internet. After the Second Coming, Chris has began to blame Russia for the delays, especially the Russo-Ukrainian War, which just so happened to begin on Chris's 40th birthday. The trigger for the war was, of course, Putin personally pitching My Little Pony Generation 5, specifically invented to be Russian propaganda. Chris has later stated that if Hasbro wants to cancel the series, make 5 more seasons of Generation 4 and remake G5 from the ground up, the World War III would end and the merge would continue. But that's all there is for Dimensional Merge. Let's move on to the next page, Dimensions. Life is a cartoon. We are all the characters of the larger. The cartoons we make are part of our own universe. We're all a reality cartoon. Chris setting the record straight. Accepting the film Who Framed Roger Rabbit as an accurate depiction of reality, Chris believes that established media franchises and fictional characters, including his own, exist in parallel universes that he calls dimensions, reality cartoons or toon worlds that are inhabited by OCs and separated by the iron curtains that make up the fourth wall. Such an unusual metaphysical system has been with Chris since at least 2010, and was roughly in its modern form some months before the idea guys publicly exploded onto the scene in November 2017, but has become the agglomerate it is today largely with their and other enablers leavened since. This article seeks to catalog the various unusual, often self-aggrandizing alternate worlds that Chris believes to exist. Background. Chris's belief in multiple cartoon dimensions existing may have stemmed from the South Park episode Imagination Land, which involved a realm where fictional characters and imaginary creations could mingle with one another. It may also be noted that Toon World is the name of a Yu-Gi-Oh card, providing yet further evidence that Chris has no originality whatsoever. Chris accepts multiverse cosmology as objective fact and uses it as a vehicle to justify his belief that cartoons are real. He was likely exposed to it for the first time in the Family Guy episode A Road to the Multiverse. It's important to point out that the infamous second call between Chris and Alec, which took place on the 28th of January 2010, occurred only 4 months after the original air date of this episode, meaning the idea was still fresh in Chris's mind. In recent years, Chris has become much more vocal about his belief in multiple universes. He invokes the existence of an alternative reality when expressing his disapproval of President Peamert, in emails with Doopy Doo-Over, and in an interview with Count Dankula. Much of Chris's modern lexicon of the names of dimensions come from the Marvel Comics multiverse. This possibly comes from a discussion with a Marvel Comics writer in July of 2018, even though the writer stated that the Marvel multiverse is a fictional construct. It's also notable to mention that Chris was so easily manipulated by the idea guy in part because he had invoked the multiverse theory, which immediately garnered Chris's attention. In reality, dimensions are not parallel universes, but rather directions you can move in within a universe. Our current reality contains 3 dimensions of space, length, width, and height/depth, and 1 dimension of time, though recent studies into relativity and quantum physics may suggest the presence of extra time dimensions. Dimensions are also relative to the observer, and speaking of the third dimension is like looking at a bottle of water and asking which ounce is the third ounce. Comic book physics do not equal real-life physics. Main dimensions. C197. C197 houses not only Quickville, but also the ton of our other fictional individuals of The Simpsons, Captain America, Batman, Eric Cartman, Kim Possible, Meg Griffin, Optimus Prime, Papa Smurf, Inuyasha, Ash Ketchum, all of the Pokemon, Digimon, and so forth. Sunset Shimmer and the Canterlot High Group, with the portal to Equestria there too, the CPUs, and all the many others as well. You imagine it, unless it exists in an alternate setting, like where World War II never happened, it will be there. Chris. C197 is the primary dimension of Chris's fantasy. The name is based off the fictional dimension C137 from Rick and Morty. It includes Quickville and all other creations Chris has produced over the years, as well as various creations by other companies and people, such as Transformers, My Little Pony, and all matter of Sonichu OC, as well as non-Sonichu examples as well, though only conditionally. The geography of this dimension is dubious, with Quickville itself behaving much like Springfield from The Simpsons, expanding and contracting as need arises. As heaven. Chris considers C197 to be his version of heaven, an afterlife populated by characters from his favorite media franchises as well as the spirits of his deceased pets and father, and possibly those of others as well. In a May 2019 tweet replying to someone whose father had passed away, Chris attempted to comfort a woman by telling her that her father's spirit was likely in C197. I am really sorry to hear about your father. It really is a shocker when someone passes on the spot like that. Apparently, in cases like that, destiny and fate needed him and had plans that are out of reach or negotiation at the moment. But rest assured, your father's soul is serving a good and greater purpose where he is right now, likely in C197 helping out there through his self-counterpart's body. Fortunately for the bereaved, Chris's account was private at the time. C139. According to Chris's Animal Crossing Antics Twilight Sparkle Secret Shipfic folder card, any and all realms featured in the video game Animal Crossing exist in a subdimension of C197, designated C193. Taking this into account, this would therefore include the villages of his pre-infamy Animal Crossing videos of yore. 1218. 1218 is the dimension we reside in, consisting of reality. Chris asked Marvel Comics writer Shauna McGuire which dimension number represents the Earth that we are currently occupying. Shauna responded with the Marvel Universe canonical answer, Earth 1218, while Chris interpreted the answer to mean she was speaking about the literal Earth. Chris began using 1218 to refer to reality's dimension. According to Chris, 1218 was inhabited by fantastical denizens alongside humans and animals, but was divided into other universes by the wizard Merlin during the reign of King Arthur in the 14th century. This is Chris's way of explaining why mythical creatures do not coexist with us today. Chris believes that 1218 and its Earth is temporary and slated to end soon, presumably within his lifetime. With the merge allegedly currently in progress, Chris believes that, though he is only a normal human with no supernatural powers or abilities, some powers from his C197 counterpart have seeped into his 1218 body. 1C211987, a mashup of the other two dimension names. This would be the combined dimension of the fictional world C197 and our reality, which Chris believes will occur with the dimension merge. R687. R687 represents the universe based on the fanfiction Sonichu vs. S&T, written by Opus Con 987, known in Kiwi Farms as Something Random 987. This is brought up on the 9th of October 2019 after Chris declares his disapproval of the series and attempts to distance anything S&T related from his universe. It's described as a home for a quote, Batman who laughs at everything from the Joker and a quote, one great massive mess. S642. S642 is the universe where fighting game Skullgirls takes place. It was first mentioned in the TSS card Plotted Device, where a robot of the same name was created to house the soul of Magichan of the Dimension. X686. X686 is the home dimension of Kiwi Farms user Cedric F's OCs. Known residents are Daedalus the Daegu, Derek, the Dimension's counterpart of Magichan, and Kepler, a shape-shifting counterpart of Blake. C911. C911 is a dimension with another doppelganger of Magichan. LEGO Dimension. As the name suggests, the LEGO Dimensions is the home of the LEGO versions of Chris and other OCs. Having played the Toys to Life video game LEGO Dimensions, which sees a plethora of licensed franchises interacting, Chris's reason for declaring the existence of this universe is clear. In June 2018, during the Count Dankula interview, Chris expressed his desire to visit the LEGO Dimensions. In the midst of his TSSF card producing spree, Chris produced 2 cards for the LEGO Dimension Sonichu and Rosechu. ZX49, also known as the MacBook Pro Dimension, is the home dimension of the OCs created by Aqua Diamond 9. Kyle Chu is from this dimension. Chris also mentioned that the dimension has fallen and that Kyle Chu is one of its survivors. CS89. Home dimensions of Dungeons & Dragons, used by Chris as part of the rationalization of his tantrum over Project S&T's redesigns of his OCs. CZ69, the home dimension of cartoons such as Teen Titans Go, Pony Life, and other similarly styled cartoons. H684, the home dimension of Isti and Topher, a counterpart of Sarah Rosechu and Robbie Sonichu respectively. 1214. The only major difference between Dimension 1218 and 1214 is that pop singer Michael Jackson lived a few years beyond 2009 and put out 2 final albums, singing about old age and the feelings of veering on death and not wanting to be old while feeling young. He ultimately still died of an overdose. Ride or Die is one of the 1214 Jackson songs. The Chris from Dimension 1214 has, for a time in mid-2020, possessed 1218's Chris's body so that Chris wouldn't have to pretend to be Sonichu. C194. C194 is the sister dimension to 1214. The Chris who was traveling between these two dimensions escaped from the war between Neo-Milwaukee and Quickville, after C194's Chris conducted the Soda Rain Holocaust. This all happened in the Alpha timeline though, not R1, which is the Omega timeline. F789 and 5769. F789 and 5769 are sibling dimensions that have since emerged in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic there. 5769 was populated by people born on the opposite side of 1218's Earth, hence Chris and his family of that dimension are Chinese. F789 was presumably where the OCs made in 5769 resided. When the COVID-19 pandemic devastated 5769, the Magichan of F789 managed to use his magic to bring 5769's Chris into F789. There, that Chris would go on to prevent the pandemic from happening, restoring 5769's population, and merge the two dimensions. Chris, role-playing as Sonichu, would consider the story as a reason for coming up with the convoluted plan to end the pandemic in the real world. N64-1. N64-1 is a nightmare counterpart of C197 where Chris, as Sonichu, claimed Opus Con 987 sent him along with Project S&T by force. The dimension is also notable for airing the Chris Chan show. Sonic.exe Dimension. Sonic EXE is a popular creepypasta which featured a hellish pocket dimension inhabited by an eldritch demonic version of Sonic. Although logically it would have made ideal trolling fuel since 2011, the year Sonic EXE was written, Chris isn't known to have mentioned it until November 2020. On the 4th of November, Chris, while role-playing that he had swapped bodies with Sonichu, fantasized that Sonic EXE had attacked his dimension and that Chris and Sonichu's body was rescued by Magi-chan and was seeking refuge in California with the WCT and Not. Chris, believing his fantasy, sent DMs to both the WCT and Not to tell them of it. Later that month, Chris replied to a tweet on a Sonic EXE animation, commenting that he had watched it and found it both haunting and inspiring. Chris again mentioned the Eldritch OC from Sonic EXE in January 2021 as part of his extended fantasy over spirit possession. The idea of such a dimension terrifies Chris, and apparently he spent some time using his goddess powers stopping entities from invading the multiverse as stated in Jail Letter 9th of May 2022. Empty Dimensions. An empty dimension is a concept by Kyle, who theorized in the 2nd of December 2020 chat about how such a dimension would work. Chris was intrigued by this, and suggested Kyle watch the animated movie Justice League: Crisis on Two Earths to flesh out the concept further. In a 14th of December posting in The Place, Chris brainstormed about empty dimensions further, complimenting Kyle for his thoughts. Shattered Glass Dimension. Named after a Transformers franchise featuring all evil Autobots and heroic Decepticons, it predictably houses evil counterparts of protagonist and possibly heroic antagonist as well as an evil counterpart of Chris, who is still male and permanently stuck in his Sonichu form. Their invasion of St. Canard and Florida was the subject of several jail arts. On a 22nd of December livestream, Chris claimed that his counterpart in the Shattered Glass universe was the one who committed incest with Barb. Oh yeah, that's a good cover. That's the one I'd use. But that's gonna be it for these articles. I hope you guys learned a lot. You guys have been asking for me to cover the Dimensional Merge, and well, it's done. I hope you're happy. I sure hope I won't have to come back here. Who am I kidding? I'll be back soon enough. But that being said, that's gonna be it for today's video. If you like what I do, leave a comment, rate, and subscribe. If you want to support me in a more personal way, consider joining up for my Patreon. You'll get exclusive membership bonuses, and you'll be helping the channel grow, which is important. What better way to spend your money, right? And there's always the merch store if you want to buy some stickers or apparel. I've got more content coming down the pipeline. But until then, I'll see you degenerates next time.